guys, sorry for the bad quality. I'm actually in my room right now, which has no natural light whatsoever and terrible fake light. So, what can you do? I actually had a request from someone to make this video, so this video is for you. I hope it is what you wanted. I'm gonna try. So, I'm a little bit biased because I hate twist and rip. If anyone asks me which one they should do, I'm not going to say twist and rip. I'm going to say backcomb neglect. That's just me. Backcomb neglect or just neglect. Twist and rip is not in the picture. I do not like it. It's nowhere near as good as the other ways. Nevertheless, here's my video. I'm explaining the differences, which is kind of like pros and cons. Mostly just hating on twist and rip and telling you why not to do it, but this is what I was able to come up with. So people who are most likely to get twist and rip dreadlocks are the people who don't want to be patient, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they just want their hair to look different from their loose hair immediately. And twist and rip is going to do that. It's going to make it into this like perfectly cylindrical and fairly dense dreadlock, which looks like a dreadlock more than loose and crazy hair, in some people's opinion. I personally think that it looks fake and it looks just like those dreadlock extensions that people put in their hair when they can't commit. And not hating, those are fine. Those are not real, obviously, that's why you're getting them. These look just like those, and if that's the look you're going for, then it'll be that way for a long time. It's been almost a year and mine still looks like this. The only reason this is bumpy is because this is my new growth. So this has changed not a bit in a year. So, if you want to have completely unmature dreadlocks for a very long time that look like dreadlocks, then that'll be perfect for you. If that's the type of dreadlock look that you want, I'm trying not to be a hater, but like, I have my own opinion about it, and I really prefer these natural, clumpy, crazy beauties that are on my own head. So, you asked for my opinion, just remember that. If you do decide to get twist and rip, it is going to look like I'm sure you are imagining in your head right away. It won't be super frizzy or anything. It's just going to be like a little stringy, cylindrical pieces of hair. It looks also very braided because that's essentially what you're doing, is like a certain type of weird braid. You can see the individual strands of hair that are like being intertwined together, and it's not attractive in my opinion. It doesn't look like dreadlocks because that's not what dreadlocks look like. They're not perfect. They are like crazy. And that's how they're supposed to be. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. Yes. That being said, twist and rip dreadlocks will eventually have an ugly phase where they poof out and get loopy. This is one of my twist and rip dreadlocks. This one's a wrapped, so that may have affected it, but this one's just now starting to get those little bumps. Just now. So it's going to get loopy just like everything else. It'll just take it a long time. So you're not going to avoid that, you're just delaying it, and that is actually just delaying the maturity of your dreadlocks. So, another thing about twist and rip dreadlocks is that they will stay exactly the same as the day that you put them in. Like, I can't find it. Okay, here it is. This is exactly the same as the day I put it in. Like, no joke. Nothing has changed. It looks the same. And my backcombed dreadlocks change weekly, if not daily. They are so much different all the time, and I love it. They're crazy shapes, and they've got all these loops and weird bumps and all that stuff, and that's great. That's like my favorite part. And these just, they don't change. They don't. They just stay in this boring, limp little cylinder, and it's not cool, man. It's not cool. And another reason why them staying exactly how you made them from day one is that they don't have the ability to move and adjust as needed like the backcombed dreadlocks do and neglect, because they're so tightly braided that it's just impossible for the hairs to loosen and tighten, and that creates a problem with your scalp because it will pull on your scalp. Dreadlocks will pull on your scalp, and the way that they stop is that they like loosen where it's too tight, or they'll tighten where it's too loose so that it's like evenly distributed. The weighted dreadlock is evenly distributed, but twist and rip dreadlocks, they can't do that because they can't like adjust the tightness and looseness in different parts of the dreadlock because it's so compact. And I hate that. I don't want them to pull. That's a problem I've noticed. My other dreadlocks will just adjust as needed. They're always adjusting themselves and like going with the flow of life and just living. My dreads are just living their life. Except for these two. They're being an issue. Another problem with them not being able to move is that there's no friction. And friction is what knots up your hair, and that's what makes it into a dreadlock. That's what makes it all thick and big and lumpy. That is knots, and knots are coming from friction. And because there's no friction going on inside these, no knots are being made. So that's why it's not maturing, is because it can't move. And like within the dreadlock, it cannot move. And that means no dreadlock. That means braid forever. Usually people who want neater looking dreadlocks will do twist and rip because they do look neater for the first while before they go crazy, I guess. It kind of looks like you just braided it, and a lot of people say that they have to do it for work, and I get that. But on the other hand, I'm wondering why they will do that. Why would you get dreadlocks if you can't have them at work? It's just confusing. But I guess it's a good option if you're working for like a certain amount of time, but after a while it's allowed to be crazy because dreadlocks are always going to be crazy at some point. If you don't want your dreadlocks to ever get crazy, put fake ones in. They sell them all over Etsy, I promise. They're great. They're expensive, but like it might be worth it. Just saying. Another problem with twist and rip dreadlocks is that when you make them, they're a lot thinner than when you make backcombed dreadlocks. Backcombed dreadlocks, when you poof them all out, they're actually quite poofy. And then twist and rip, it really just makes them super, super thin looking. And the same dreadlock that has the same section amount of hair, the twist and rip one is going to look thinner, and the backcombed one is going to look a lot thicker. And that can kind of throw off the sectioning if you don't take it into consideration, because you'll be like, oh my goodness, that dreadlock is way too thin. I need to make bigger ones. And so you'll make bigger sections, and then down the line, you'll have huge dreadlocks. Another problem is that when you make twist and rip dreadlocks, they're so thin compared to backcomb dreadlocks with the same sectioning of hair. It's going to make it look like you have less hair. It's going to make your hair look a lot thinner because the dreadlocks themselves are thinner. And I know a lot of people don't like their hair to look thinner. I don't like my hair to look thinner, so that's kind of a problem. I would consider that a problem. I will say that one positive of twist and rip dreadlocks is that they're a lot easier to decorate. That's why I've been able to have this wrap in my dreadlocks for the past like 7 months because it's so much easier to wrap, because the other dreadlocks are all bumpy and flat. They have a weird shape, so it's a little bit more difficult to wrap weird shape. It's also a lot more difficult to push a bead over the big old bumps as opposed to just sliding it over this little string that's very uniform. So if you want to decorate right away, maybe twist and rip is for you. You can still wrap the lumpy ones and you can still put beads on them. You just need a bigger hole. So I will say a couple of cons for Backcomb because I don't want to be a total jerk to twist and rip people. Backcombed dreadlocks are flatter. They're not very cylindrical at the beginning because they're molding into their locked state. And when you lay on them and all that stuff, they just tend to get flat. They're going to be cylindrical eventually, but for now, they are flat. So some people really hate that. I actually don't care at all. I kind of think it looks cool, but if you hate that, it's probably going to happen if you do Backcomb. Probably will be able to avoid that if you do twist and rip. Another thing people tend to not like is that you have a lot of loose hair with backcombing, a little bit more than twist and rip because your hair is able to freely move, so it finds its way out of the dreadlocks a lot easier. And you also have a lot more frizz because the hair is not trapped. And like I said before, your hair being trapped when you're trying to make dreadlocks is not really a pro, but I guess some people think it is, so yeah. It does look messier for sure in the beginning than twist and rip, but that's just because they're maturing faster, you know? Definitely more of a messy look. In my opinion, I like the way that they look because they look a lot more natural to me, and the whole process really is more natural because when you are backcombing, you're just creating friction and sectioning so that your hair can have a place to start. I don't think backcombing or twist and rip is necessary. Neglect is probably the really good way to go, but I did backcomb my dreadlocks. They fell out mostly, and I just let them be, but I did start out by backcombing. It looks so much more natural, I think. And I know that they're not completely mature, so it looks kind of like I just have curly loose hair, which my loose hair is curly, but I know that eventually when they're completely locked, it'll look super rad. All I gotta do is Google the pics, man. This is probably the lamest video I've ever made. Yeah, like I said, I just really love all of the different loops and personality. When I check my dreadlocks, I'll check them in the mirror and be like, oh, let's see how they're doing, see if they've shrunk or if there's any new loops. And I can actually recognize each one. Like, I don't have names for them or anything, but I can recognize each one and I can see their individual process and progress. And I think that's really cool. I'd rather be able to do that because I can, like, really spot the differences and see how they're maturing, and I just can't with my twist and rip dreadlocks. They're not doing anything and they're boring. Backcomb dreadlocks just mature much faster than twist and rip. It's easier for them to lock because there is more friction, and the best way to lock your hair is to just leave it alone. You don't need to be controlling all the time. You really just need to leave it alone. I know it's a hard concept for people to grasp in the beginning, but leaving it alone is literally the best thing you can do for it. Seriously. I'm not just trying to convince you of my ways. It's seriously the best way to do it. So yeah, I hope this was a good enough video to answer your questions. I am so much team Backcomb, it's not even funny, but that's just out of team Backcomb and team twist and rip. I'm really team neglect. If I could do it over again, I'd probably not put as much work into beginning my dreadlocks. All I had to do was stop brushing them and wash them with different soap. You live and you learn. I'm not trying to hate on people who have twist and rip dreadlocks. I have friends who have twist and rip dreadlocks and they look beautiful. This is just what I've learned for myself and the kind of advice I would give myself if I was trying to see what I wanted to do. I would tell myself not to even put the twist and rip dreadlocks in because they're not doing anything. So I'm just trying to give you guys what I've learned personally in my own experience with my own hair, because I can't give you someone else's experience. All I've got is my own. So that's all I'm trying to do. Everybody who has dreadlocks, it's your own journey. Your hair is going to do its own thing. It's not going to be the same as mine. And everybody's dreadlocks are real dreadlocks. I'm not trying to say anybody's dreadlocks are not real. They're real, unless they are actually physically not real and you just tied them into your hair, then those are really not real. But they're still rad. Anyways, thanks you guys so much for watching and seeing me ramble on about my opinion on which way to put dreadlocks in is the best and the differences between them. Hopefully it was helpful for some of you. I love you all so much. You're all amazing. I hope you have a fabulous, amazing, wonderful